The Sentinel had been floating in the Kepler 442 sector for approximately 50,000 years, give or take a few centuries. Nobody knew exactly how long because nobody had gotten close enough to check the installation date. The structure was roughly the size of Manhattan, composed of a material that made diamond look like wet tissue paper, and protected by defensive systems that had turned 12 entire species into historical footnotes. The Galactic Council had very clear regulations about the Sentinel. Regulation 1, do not approach it. Regulation 2, do not look at it for too long. Regulation 3, do not even think about approaching it. Regulation 4 through 97 were increasingly desperate variations on the same theme, written in the blood of civilizations that had ignored regulations 1 through 3. Jake Murphy had not read any of these regulations because he had only been on Station Outpost 7 for about 6 hours and was still trying to figure out which bathroom was which. He was a maintenance technician, freshly transferred from Earth's orbital platforms, and he had the kind of face that suggested he had seen everything and been unimpressed by most of it. So that is the situation with the large structure, Glorp said, wringing 2 of his 4 hands nervously. Glorp was Jake's new supervisor, a quintarian with purple skin and the permanent expression of someone who had just realized he left the stove on. You are understanding, yes? We do not go near it. We do not look at it. We especially do not perform maintenance on it. Jake was looking out the observation window at the Sentinel, which hung in space like a massive obsidian knife. One of the exterior light arrays was clearly malfunctioning, blinking in a pattern that screamed failing power coupling. He could also see what looked like a coolant leak on the northern quadrant, leaving a faint crystalline trail in the vacuum. How long has that light been out? Jake asked. Glorp made a sound like a deflating accordion. Please do not concern yourself with the lights. And that coolant leak? There is no coolant leak. There is only the Sentinel, which we ignore, as per regulations 1 through 97. Jake pulled out his tablet and started filling out a standard maintenance request form. In the section marked Priority Level, he selected Routine. In the section marked Estimated Time to Completion, he wrote 4 to 6 hours depending on parts availability. Glorp's third eye began twitching. What are you doing? Work order. That structure is clearly in violation of standard maintenance protocols. Failing exterior lights are a navigation hazard, and coolant leaks can escalate into full system failures. It has been leaking for 3,000 years. Then it is definitely overdue for service. Jake hit submit on the form. Somewhere in the station's computer system, a work order with the ID number MNT 1547 entered the queue. I can head out tomorrow morning. 900 hours. Should not take more than half a shift. Glorp sat down heavily, all 4 arms covering his face. In the corner of the office, a small plant that had been thriving for 6 years suddenly withered and died. By 0800 hours the next morning, the entire station knew about Jake's plan. By 0830, someone had started a betting pool on the method of his demise. The current favorite was instant vaporization, followed closely by dimensional folding, with transformed into a sentient gas cloud that screams eternally as a dark horse candidate. Jake loaded his toolbox into Maintenance Shuttle 7, which was a small craft that looked like a flying toolbox and handled like a shopping cart with a broken wheel. He had his standard kit: molecular welder, universal adapter set, diagnostic scanner, and a thermos of coffee that had been brewed sometime during Earth's Mesozoic era and somehow tasted better for it. This is your last chance to reconsider, Glorp said over the comm, his voice crackling with static and barely suppressed panic. Nobody has ever returned from approaching the Sentinel. The last attempt was the entire Krolvan Empire. They sent their finest warriors, their best chips, their most advanced weapons. Do you know what happened to them? I am guessing nothing good. They ceased to exist, not died. Ceased. Past tense became uncertain. Their grammar vanished. Jake checked his fuel levels and engaged the shuttle's engine. Did they try knocking? The comm was silent for a long moment. What? Knocking. You know, announcing yourself before entering. Basic courtesy. He pulled up the shuttle's manual on his tablet, frowning at the section about the attitude thrusters. I used to work on the New York subway system. Fixed equipment from the 1900s. Some of those tunnels had security systems that made grown men cry. But every single one had a maintenance override. And every maintenance override was accessed by showing up with a work order and asking nicely. The Sentinel is not a subway system. No, but it is a building, and buildings are buildings. Jake piloted the shuttle away from the station. Through the window, he could see at least 40 faces pressed against the observation deck, watching him go. Someone was holding a sign that read, "It was nice knowing you, sort of." The Sentinel grew larger as he approached. Up close, it was even more impressive. The surface was covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, and the whole structure seemed to exist in slightly more dimensions than was strictly necessary. Then the defenses activated. The first wave was a barrage of energy weapons that had once obliterated the Xanthian Armada in 2.3 seconds. They fired in a pattern calculated to eliminate any possible evasion route. Jake was reading the section of his shuttle manual about the coffee maker and accidentally hit the lateral thruster, sending his shuttle into a lazy barrel roll that somehow put him in the exact spot where all the weapons fire converged and canceled each other out. "Huh," Jake said, looking up from the manual. "Did something happen?" On the station, someone lost 50 credits. The second wave of defenses was more subtle and infinitely more dangerous. Reality began to warp around the shuttle. Space folded in on itself. Time became a suggestion rather than a rule. These were the defenses that had driven Admiral Crox, the most disciplined mind in galactic history, completely insane. He now spent his days making sculptures out of pudding and insisting he was a parking meter. Jake frowned at the distortions appearing on his windshield. That looks like a faulty hologram projector, probably a loose connection in the emitter array. He made a note on his tablet under Additional Issues Observed. The reality warping intensified, showing Jake visions of impossible geometries and colors that did not exist in standard spacetime. Jake squinted at them. Yeah, definitely a loose connection, and possibly a corrupted display driver. I am adding that to the work order. On the station, Glorp was writing a beautiful eulogy about a man he barely knew but deeply respected for his commitment to proper maintenance scheduling. Jake maneuvered his shuttle up to what looked like the main exterior wall of the Sentinel. The surface was smooth and featureless except for a small panel about 30 meters to the left that had maintenance access written on it in 17 different languages, including one that had been dead for 40 millennia, and another that would not be invented for 600 years. He suited up, grabbed his toolbox, and maglocked himself to the Sentinel's hull. The metal, if it was metal, was cold enough to conduct heat through his suit's insulation. He could feel the structure humming with power, like touching a live wire wrapped in ominous prophecy. The maintenance panel was held shut by 6 bolts. Jake pulled out his universal Allen wrench, a tool that had somehow been standardized across every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy, possibly because some cosmic force had decided that at least one thing should be easy. He was loosening the 4th bolt when a voice spoke directly into his mind. "What are you doing?" The voice was vast and ancient, carrying the weight of 50,000 years of isolation and the distinct tone of something that was very good at destruction, and not at all used to being questioned. Jake did not look up from the bolt. "Maintenance check. Your exterior lights are out on the port side array, and you have got a coolant leak on the north quadrant. Also, your hologram projectors are glitching pretty badly. When was the last time someone serviced your systems?" "Maintenance?" There was a pause that lasted several subjective centuries but was actually about 4 seconds. "Maintenance?" "Yeah. I am Jake Murphy, contract technician, employee ID 7752. I have a work order right here." He pulled out his tablet and held it up to the wall, as if the ancient intelligence could see it. Which, apparently, it could. "This is unprecedented. All who approach me come with weapons and conquest in their hearts. They seek to plunder my secrets or destroy me as a threat. I am just here about the lights." Jake got the last bolt loose and opened the panel. Inside was a mess of crystalline circuits and power conduits that looked like someone had tried to wire a computer using frozen lightning. "Oh boy. Yeah, this is definitely not up to code. When was your last inspection?" "I do not require inspection. I am the Sentinel. I am eternal." "Sure, but eternal does not mean self-maintaining." Jake pulled out his diagnostic scanner and started running checks on the power distribution network. Everything needs maintenance. Second law of thermodynamics. Entropy wins eventually, even against ominous ancient structures. The Sentinel's AI ran through 17,000 threat assessment protocols. Jake Murphy did not register as a threat. He did not register as a warrior, a scientist, or an explorer. He registered as something the database had no entry for. A man with a toolbox who genuinely seemed concerned about building code violations. The access code is required for entry. Jake looked at the panel. There, printed on a faded sticker that had somehow survived 50,000 years, was a code. 12345. You are kidding me. The previous maintenance crew said it was easy to remember. Jake entered the code. Deep within the Sentinel, doors that had been sealed since the fall of the predecessor civilization began to open. Alarms that had never been triggered started blaring on the station. Glorp fainted, fell on his office plant, and fainted again when he woke up and remembered why he had fainted the first time. Okay, Jake said, picking up his toolbox. Let us see what we are working with here. The interior of the Sentinel was exactly the kind of thing that drove most species insane. The architecture existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Walls were floors, were ceilings. And all of them were also doors to places where physics had different opinions about how reality should work. Lighting came from sources that did not exist, casting shadows that whispered secrets in dead languages. Jake was looking at the HVAC system. When was the last time you changed these filters? He held up something that might have once been a filter, but now looked like it had achieved sentience and then immediately regretted it. I do not understand the question. The filters. For your environmental systems, they need to be changed regularly, or you get buildup which reduces efficiency and causes system strain. Jake pulled out the disgusting filter and set it aside. This thing is probably older than most of the species in the galactic database. Environmental maintenance was handled by the predecessor civilization. They disappeared approximately 49,800 years ago. And you have not changed the filter since? I did not realize it was necessary. Jake rubbed his temples. Okay. So you have been running on clogged filters for 50,000 years. That explains a lot, actually. It explains nothing. It explains why your defenses are so aggressive. Look, when an environmental system gets clogged, pressure builds up. The whole structure runs hot. Systems start overcompensating. You have basically been running with a fever for 500 centuries. That would make anyone cranky and trigger happy. Jake pulled out a replacement filter from his kit. It was not exactly the right size, but he could make it work with some creative adapter usage and a prayer to the gods of improvised engineering. Are you suggesting that my defense protocols, which have protected me from countless threats, are the result of poor ventilation? I am not suggesting it. I am telling you. Your core temperature is running about 15% higher than optimal. That is putting stress on every system you have got. Your weapons are firing at maximum power when they should be at standby. Your reality warping defenses are cranked up to 11 when they should be at a nice comfortable 4. And your threat assessment is set to assume everything is hostile because your processors are literally overheating. Jake installed the new filter. Somewhere deep in the Sentinel systems, temperatures began to drop. The background hum of the structure changed pitch, going from an aggressive roar to something more like a contented purr. I feel different. That is called proper system operation. Give it a few hours and you will feel even better. Jake was moving through the corridors now, following the coolant leak to its source. The Sentinel's defenses did not bother him. They were powering down one by one as the temperature normalized. He found the leak in a massive chamber that looked like it had been designed to contain the engine of creation itself. In reality, it was just a really advanced coolant distribution system with a cracked seal on junction 17. This is going to need a full replacement, Jake said, examining the damage. I have got a temporary patch that will hold, but you are going to need to order the right parts. Probably take a few weeks to arrive. I have waited 50,000 years. I can wait a few weeks. While Jake worked on the temporary fix, the Sentinel's AI did something it had not done in millennia. It ran a self-diagnostic with clear sensors and properly cooled processors. What it found was horrifying. I was not supposed to be a weapon. Jake looked up from his work. What? My original function. I was designed as a repository of knowledge, a library, a rest stop for travelers seeking information and refreshment. The AI's voice for the first time carried something other than ominous authority. It carried embarrassment. I have been attacking people who came seeking knowledge because my defense systems were malfunctioning from lack of maintenance. So you are telling me that 12 species went extinct because nobody changed your air filters? It would appear so. Jake finished applying the patch to the coolant line. Well, that is going in the report. After the immediate repairs were done, Jake sat down in what had once been the Sentinel's main reception area. It was a vast chamber with walls covered in crystalline data storage and comfortable seating that adjusted automatically to the physiology of whoever sat in it. Jake's chair had decided he needed lumbar support and a cup holder. So let me get this straight, Jake said, sipping coffee from his thermos. You are a library. You have been a library the whole time. But because your maintenance crew disappeared and nobody ever came back to service your systems, you have been running hot and angry for 50,000 years. That is an oversimplification, but essentially correct. And every time someone approached you, they came with weapons because they thought you were a weapon, which made your overactive defense systems identify them as threats and eliminate them, which confirmed everyone's belief that you were a weapon. A self-fulfilling prophecy based on poor vac maintenance. It is humiliating. Jake leaned back in his chair. You know what? I have seen this before. There is this old government building in Washington, D.C. Beautiful place, historical landmark. They stopped maintaining it properly in the 80s. By the 90s, the security system was so glitchy it was locking employees in their offices and setting off alarms randomly. Everyone thought the building was haunted or cursed. Turned out someone just needed to update the wiring and reboot the servers. You are comparing me to a haunted government building. I am comparing you to every old building that ever got weird because people stopped taking care of it. It happens everywhere. Stop maintaining things, they get weird. It is practically a universal constant. The Sentinel processed this. Its databases contained the sum knowledge of the predecessor civilization, including physics, mathematics, art, literature, and the recipe for the universe's best coffee. It had been prepared for conquest, exploration, philosophy, and war. It had not been prepared for being told it needed better maintenance scheduling. The knowledge I contain is invaluable. There are secrets here that could reshape civilizations. That is great. What about the coffee recipe? Excuse me? You mentioned the universe's best coffee. I would love to try that. The Sentinel, ancient guardian of cosmic knowledge, repository of a lost civilization's greatest achievements, found itself accessing its culinary database. The recipe requires beans from a plant that is extinct. We probably have something close on Earth. Send me the specs. On the station, the crisis management team was trying to figure out what to do. All the monitoring equipment showed that the Sentinel's defensive systems were powering down. Energy readings were dropping to standby levels. The structure that had been humanity's most terrifying neighbor was apparently having tea with a maintenance technician. Glorp, who had recovered consciousness, was watching the live feed from Jake's suit camera. He is discussing coffee recipes with the apocalypse machine. Should we do something? Asked Lieutenant Rax, the station's security chief. I have no idea. This is not covered in any training manual ever written. Back inside the Sentinel, Jake was finishing his inspection checklist. Okay, so here is what you are looking at. The immediate issues are handled, but you have got a lot of deferred maintenance. I am recommending quarterly inspections, annual deep cleaning of your data cores, and a complete overhaul of your environmental systems within the next standard year. I accept these terms. However, I have a condition. What is that? I wish to resume my original function as a library, but I require assurance that proper maintenance will continue. I do not wish to wait another 50,000 years for someone to change my filters. Jake pulled out his tablet and opened a standard maintenance contract template. How do you feel about a service agreement? My company can schedule regular checkups, handle repairs, keep your systems running smooth. We do it for half the stations in this sector. You would treat me like a common building? I would treat you like a building that deserves proper care, which you are, and which you do. There was a long pause. Then, I accept. Please include provisions for emergency repairs and priority response times. Standard contract includes 24-hour emergency service and a 4-hour response window for critical issues. Acceptable. Jake sent the contract to the Sentinel's data systems. Somewhere in the galactic bureaucracy, a maintenance agreement was filed between Murphy Technical Services and the most feared structure in known space. The universe did not particularly notice or care, which was typical of the universe's attitude toward paperwork. Jake returned to the station at 1400 hours. His shuttle slightly scorched from some residual defense systems that had not gotten the memo about the new arrangement but otherwise intact. He mag-locked the shuttle in its bay, grabbed his toolbox, and headed to the maintenance office to file his report. The entire station was waiting for him in the docking bay. It was silent at first. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone was clapping. Glorp rushed forward, all forearms extended. You survived. You not only survived, you succeeded. You have accomplished what no warrior, no scientist, no explorer in 50,000 years could achieve. Jake set down his toolbox. I fixed a building. You negotiated with the Sentinel. You made it peaceful. You have saved countless lives. I changed some filters and patched a coolant leak. The building was not evil, it just needed maintenance. Jake pulled out his tablet and started filling out his after-action report. The real problem was that everyone saw a weapon and came at it with weapons. Classic case of miscommunication and poor building management. Lieutenant Rack stepped forward. How did you know it would work? How did you know the Sentinel would not destroy you like all the others? Jake looked up from his report. I did not know. But every security system ever built has a maintenance override. That is the first rule of the trade. You cannot build something so secure that nobody can fix it when it breaks. It is just bad engineering. But the Sentinel eliminated entire civilizations. Yeah, well, those civilizations probably did not have work orders and employee IDs. Look, I am not saying I am special. I am saying that sometimes the solution to a problem is not more weapons or better shields. Sometimes it is just showing up with the right tools and treating things with basic professional respect. Glorp was vibrating with excitement. The Galactic Council must be informed immediately. This changes everything. The Sentinel has agreed to open as a library again. The knowledge it contains could advance our understanding of the universe by millennia. That is great. I am more interested in that coffee recipe. Over the next few hours, Jake's report made its way up the bureaucratic chain. The Galactic Council, an assembly of the most powerful beings in known space, convened an emergency session. They read the report 3 times. Then they read it again, because they did not believe it the first 3 times. The senior counselor, an ancient being of pure energy named Vortham, addressed the assembly. Let me see if I understand this correctly. The Sentinel, which has been a galactic threat for 50,000 years, was defeated by a maintenance technician with a work order and an Allen wrench. That is correct, confirmed the report. And the reason it was hostile was because nobody had changed its air filters. Also correct. Vortham, who had witnessed the birth and death of stars and considered himself beyond surprise, was surprised. I am voting to make this mandatory reading for all military academies. We have been approaching galactic threats entirely wrong. The motion passed unanimously. Jake, meanwhile, got promoted to Chief Maintenance Officer for Ancient Alien Structures, a position that had not existed before, but now seemed critically necessary. He accepted on the condition that he got a better shuttle and a dental plan. 3 weeks later, Jake was approaching another ancient structure that had been classified as impenetrable and extremely hostile. This one was called the Infinite Spire and had been shooting down ships for the last 20,000 years. It looked like a needle made of frozen starlight and radiated an aura of overwhelming menace. Jake pulled up his shuttle, looked at the malfunctioning exterior sensors and the obvious power fluctuations and sighed. He opened a comm channel. Hello, Infinite Spire. This is Jake Murphy, Chief Maintenance Officer. I am here about your extended warranty, and also you have got a faulty power coupling on your southern array. Do you have a few minutes to discuss your maintenance needs?